All right, we're going to do a full-length commentary on Sunrise, A Song of Two Humans, F.W. Murnau's great movie. One of the greatest movies ever made, according to a lot of people. You don't have to like this movie at all. You could be learning about it for some reason or other. This commentary is not going to be about technical features. You can go find those on the internet. I'm going to talk about thematic issues, structural issues, and how a viewer can come along and perceive this movie now in the 21st century and how people might have seen it in the past. It's historical, psychological, economic issues, all kinds of issues. We're going to talk about those in this commentary. So Murnau goes to Hollywood and is going to make this movie, which becomes the first Academy Award winner for Best Picture, along with Wings. It shared a Best Picture with another movie. Now, here's a title, Sunrise, A Song of Two Humans. And this is already our first cue to watch this movie differently. This is not necessarily a movie, a film. It is a narrative film because it has a story and characters. But when it says song, that's different. That's a different kind of viewing experience. And here's a giant question for you. How do you watch a song? It's almost as if the movie is trying to give us synesthesia, being able to see music, or to see music played out on a screen. Now, of course, this is one of the first movies that has a score accompanying it in the silent era. It's right on the cusp of that technological revolution, and so the score comes along with it. But yet we're watching, too, the visual element here is a song as well. What kind of song is it? Is it a ballad? Is it a love song? A lyrical song? Like, what is this exactly? I think that's worth considering. We'll do that as we go through the movie. Here's the list of characters, and you can already see there's no names. No names to these characters. They're typed. They're general categories, photographer, barber, but in particular the first three, man and wife. Notice it doesn't say woman, but man and wife. So the man, the wife, the woman from the city, these are our major characters, and that means that the movie is into general types and not specific characters. I mean, it's clearly signaling you should take this in a more generalized way. It will even say this right now, where it says, you can read it, the song is of the man and his wife, is of no place, and every place you might hear it anywhere at any time. This is a very rare movie that says that it's a universal movie, or you could take it in that way. This is about everywhere and every place, possibly, in the past, in the future, and right now in 1927. And so then you can apply it to United States, because it's a Hollywood movie, but Europe. Maybe you could play it to Africa for all I know, but it's making this declaration that the general types and general categories, the city, the country, the man, the wife, may apply everywhere. Now you can go to town, because most movies, I think, are more particular. And so when we deal with particulars, they're of a place and time with particular people, they're more lyrical. This one is a lyrical movie, but it's universal too. And we'll see how that works as we go. It begins in the summertime, as it says, which is a pleasant time, but as you'll see, it's a time of temptation. So the juxtaposition, maybe ironic juxtaposition of delight and beauty and light and truth versus the seduction that's going to come here real soon is stark, and you'll have these contrasts throughout the movie. Here is a cityscape. We're going to go back into the cityscape. And the two places contrast in this movie, city and country, those may be universally applied here, but certainly for 1927, they're important because the movement of urbanization, just talk about America, millions of people go from countrysides to cities, or immigrants going from immigrant-type places, maybe rural-type places, to then big cities, which had been happening for over, for several decades in America at this point. But now you get the inverse, and this is the first shot of the waterway. It's a very important transition space between the city and the country. And here the inverse is that the vacationers, these tourists from the big city places, are coming to the country, and in a way ruining it, and in their own way ruining it. And we'll see that it's a moral ruining. Maybe today it's an economic ruining, or too many people, as I see in port cities like Venice, are being dumped by big ships onto, these tiny, quaint little places, and sort of overwhelming them during the day, during summer, spring or summer, or the height of tourist seasons. This happens all the time today, maybe an order of magnitude worse, but here, we're talking about it in 1927 as if it's a problem as well. And here's the intertitle. A woman of the city, the type of the vacationist coming in, and now we're going to see her ruining these country places in a lot of ways. The first shot will be innocuous to 21st century viewers, but for 1920s, it clearly tells people she is a loose woman, a seductress for sure. The cigarette smoke is the first tell. Whatever that means, it means here a woman smoking cigarettes must be a little looser morally. Maybe you don't believe that, but back then that was a clear signal. But there's a second big one here, and it's her loose clothing, which she's going to take off. Undergarments. And that will become a problem in the 1930s when the Hays Code of 1930 shows up and is more restrictive for Hollywood movies and what women can wear and all kinds of other things depicted in films. Here's the second shot where we clearly see her in the inn with the German Expressionist table and that massive lamp over us. Something's wrong or awry, and the way that she is interacting with these people, they're servile to her, and they're uncertain about her, and their warped world. Maybe it's been warped by her, maybe it was warped already, and then she showed up and made it worse. But here she is, and in a way, she's a woman of the night, a single woman going out at night by herself. What does this mean? These people on the right side in this long shot, in length, are talking about her. And so you can see this duality, which we'll see throughout the movie. This side of the frame versus that. The country people here talking about her. And then as she moves down this street, she is focused on, and different lighting schemes show her in a different light. And that means she has different, it could signal she has different personalities, different types of behavior. As she moves through this little landscape. An ordinary, a common tourist, but then a seductress who's going to pull a husband away from his wife and even suggest murder, as we'll see here in just a little bit. A woman of the night. It's a little tiny shade of horror movie stuff, which, as you know, Murnau made Nosferatu a few years before. Is she a female seductress, vampire? Like, oh, okay, we got to deal with this. She calls out to him. And there he is in the bottom left, a dull, sulking corner of the screen. He's looking out left, and you can see something's wrong because she's up there in the middle, but he's looking out left. There's something different, at odds about them. He's looking the wrong direction from her, where she is geographically in the frame. In this stark house, domestic space, with that table at the bottom where he should be eating, he goes up to the window. And now you have your bifurcated halves, your two halves, the window, the escape into the real world, and then the wife entering from the kitchen, perhaps, in this domestic space. The domestic space is to the right. The wider world of seduction is to the left. And this man, who we don't know, has this stark moral choice, which is figured here in this shot. He's back to the wall. That column there, dark spaces. This is a very open shot with him having two sides to go to. And this choice is very stark and plain, as it will be for the next, well, probably the whole movie. For the first 30 minutes, he's going to have one of the worst choices of his life. The domestic sphere, which is here, this still life-like painting of the table versus the thing he's looking out to his left. I hate to say this because it's a stereotype. It's the worst side. It's the worst side. The right is better. The left tends to be worse in a lot of ways, in all kinds of cultural scenarios. Sometimes in movies it is too. Here's the exterior shot of him going to the window. She's happy that he is coming to it, and her siren song has worked. So the movie then will proceed with the country being perverted by the city, a very common topic in this, in the Victorian period, in the early 20th century especially. I'm reading all kinds of naturalist writers from America. Theodore Dreiser's sister Carrie has this all over the place. And the Hays Code of 1930 will say it out loud, that movies which have an appeal to everyone and everywhere are going into the more naive, innocent country spaces and perverting people. They don't use that word, but they basically say that. And that's why the Hays Code one of the reasons it needs to be enacted is so it doesn't corrupt country people, because city people have supposedly worse morals. Anyway, this is a wonderful Dutch Renaissance picture of this woman who's downcast, sitting where the man was, and I think this is quoting Renaissance masters here. She is the wife, obviously. The question is, does she know about the adultery and seduction? How much does she know? We don't know how much she knows. We can imagine as much as we want to. Then we get to this cut to in the dissolve from the intertitle into a flashback of happier days and a spring farm life with oxen. I always think of oxen when I think of being carefree. But this idyllic pastoral picture, once again, coming from all kinds of paintings, even like a Mary, Joseph, Jesus kind of thing. Christmas at the manger, but this is springtime at the farm, and this happy trio with their reproductive, stuff of the plants and the baby and the oxen doing the plowing. Now they're barren, and not only barren, but here the money lenders are going to strip the farm. The woman's going to strip the man from the country and destroy, pervert, economically as well as morally, the farm, the country life. This is an interesting shot. I don't know if this is real or not, of the man selling a cow, if this is a hypothetical, a thought, or if he really did this. I think this is just someone thinking about it, and maybe this is the woman here who's telling the story thinking about it. But it is an economic ruination, and so that's important. It's not just a moral ruination as well. When your morals are perverted, your economics are perverted, Now, here's what thing I want to get to. This right here is, as I was saying, like a 17th century Dutch Renaissance painting. This movie says to watch it as a song. To me, you should watch it as like moving paintings in a lot of the shots. Moving paintings. The paintings don't move, but here you've got literal moving pictures with the woman going into the domestic space, the bedroom, of the child who is innocent and naive, trying to be happy and playful with her hair, but the woman is downcast. The difference between adulthood and childhood is going to be juxtaposed with this. This is one of the most famous shots ever, at least in silent movies. This, following shot of the man going out into the dark, murky fog of night, giving into the seductress from the city, and going to meet her for a dalliance. And this shot, of course, is a natural shot. It was done on the set, but with all the plants and the scenery, yet it's this boggy, swampy, fog of night atmosphere, obviously doing what's called the pathetic fallacy. The pathetic fallacy being when the weather imitates or mimics a character's emotional state. Now that right there, this shot is fantastic because it goes from that third person to first person point of view. We take on his point of view. We become the man. And it gives us more moral impetus to think about his position, going to look at this woman who has pulled him out, the siren song called him out to this watery spot with the moonlight. Should be a romantic atmosphere, but we know it's perverted because this guy is married and has an oath to his wife back home, who is a dear, sweet, innocent type with the child. This movie will have, if you hate this movie, and maybe some of you will because it's too slow for you, there will be a dozen shots that still should inspire you in your creation of whatever. TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, I don't care what you're making, because there are lots of different kinds of shots with ideas. Like that one where it goes third person to first person to third person. We don't see that much anymore. There are not a lot of directors who are that creative. Now here we have this intercutting, cross-cutting of the man and the woman from the city with the wife and the child. And the stark binary, there you go, in this movie is just everywhere. Two halves, two things in opposition. Two things that are completely different. The woman perverting the woman from the city in the outside atmosphere. The wife with the child in the domestic space. One is great, one is awful, morally speaking. Here we have, and here is a wonderful picture, but it's awful at the same time, of the woman dominating the man all over the top of him. So the inverse of the silent movie and classical movie scenario where the man is over the top of the woman, with a more active and passive scenario between them. Given the male and female value system, you can completely disagree with that, but that is the case here. Now, this is a wonderful intertitle, which is novel. I wish silent movies could continue so they could innovate this kind of thing, where the intertitle gives you the idea of the woman. Can she be drowned? The woman from the city, like the woman from Proverbs, perverting the man. Proverbs, the book of the Bible, coming up here. And there we just saw a shot of the idea or the hypothetical of the wife being drowned. The man is a very aggressive guy. He's going to do this several times, be angry, aggressive, which is a sign of his internal turmoil, but at the same time, he's out of control. And this is, of course, what this... You could blame it in a social way on the city itself, and not just his internal personality or disposition. They'll go through a lot of emotions here, and she will, persuade him. And the Proverbs thing, by the way, is you should go read that book, The Woman of the Night versus the wise woman, the wisdom herself. The young men should get wisdom instead of be with the women of the night. That's the woman juxtaposition here of the wife and the woman from the city. And here we see her vision of the city. Maybe it's a shared vision, and it's a wild model-like romp through cosmopolitan visions, which that right there contrasts entirely with the 17th century Renaissance painting, still life stuff. That's more like all of the modernisms of early 20th century paintings, with this wild band and multiple shots laid over each other, playing raucously and moving raucously. I don't know about you, when I think of big cities, I don't think of tubas, but whatever. And she is able to project this vision onto the night sky. That's a wonderful idea, of her being able to project a movie screen onto the sky with the man being able to see it. But I think this is the painting idea. There is another still life of the shot at night and we'll see this, of the countryscape. This idea of competing virtues, competing values in the sort of shots that are modeling paintings. So the homely, maybe more Protestant-like Dutch Renaissance painting shots we saw of the domestic sphere versus the isms of the 20th century, whichever, pick your ism. Cubism, abstract expressionism comes after this movie, but all kinds of isms like that, which are going to describe the feelings, the values, the city life, urbanization of 20th century, early 20th century. So this woman has an idea. She's going to go get these. Now I'm going to open my can so I can drink something. There you go. She gets this idea for the bulrushes, which become a very important symbol and idea in this movie of the thing that's going to help the man escape the drowning accident, but later on save. The spoilers must come here. This is going to save the wife. So these ironic juxtapositions, ironic inversals happen throughout this movie. The thing that's going to save the man and get him to the woman of the city is the thing that's going to save his wife later and preserve the marriage. And I suppose bulrushes, I have to think about this, and just doing this off the top of my head, come from the book of Exodus, which I think saved baby Moses from the Pharaoh and the killing of the firstborn sons. Here the man comes back to the house. We just saw that stark, almost Gothic-like, I think that's German expressionistic, interior shot of the bedroom. It's a wonderful shot of the shadows over the wall. And I should note that the man and the shadow of him comes up throughout this first 30 minutes of the movie. You can look at it in earlier shots, but there it is right there. He's of a dual nature, obviously. His shadowy self wants to go kill his wife. He's projecting a darker sort of side of himself. I have no idea if Jungian stuff is coming up here, if Murnau would have known that. But maybe it's in the air, maybe it's part of the zeitgeist, and you can read that into the movie. But the split self, the duality, the doppelganger idea comes up here with the imagery. And the man is going to be, for the next probably 15 minutes in the movie, have the worst existential moment crisis of his life, with the seduction on the one hand, listening to the woman of the city, the proverbial prostitute kind of woman from Proverbs, versus the wise woman, the homely woman, the saintly woman, the godly woman of Proverbs 31. Go read that chapter, which describes the godly woman. This is a wonderful shot. I love this shot, which of the interior. It should be used more, and it's going to have the split nature of the marriage once again. The woman sleeping innocently on the right, but little does she know her husband's a predator. Vampire-like, even Nosferatu callbacks perhaps here, of him sneaking in at night and not going to kill her, but in his dreams thinking about killing her. And they're going to obviously have two beds. He'll be once again on the bottom left, the corner that he occupies a few times, as we've seen with the kitchen scene earlier, in distress, distraught, sullen, split between obviously the domestic and the city, domestic life and the city life. There, that whole shot is very slow. That's what I mean by moving paintings and moving through them. That wonderful sort of Gothic-like shot, in my opinion. Now here, I love these ideas. What's it like to feel tempted? And how does a movie show us a temptation and then the desire manifested in the mind? So the hyper-reality of the mind. There's the water dissolving on top of him or coming on top of him. That's, not just the water's going to drown his wife in, it's the uncertainty of life, his decision making. Even he's drowning right there. He's going to kill himself in a way by killing his wife. But I love how that dissolve goes from, a dream and temptation into reality. So the dream and temptation manifests itself as reality, which is the real place, the space of that waterway where the country house is, or the countryscape is. And then we have morning, obviously, with his wife looking over him. Again, another of these sort of pleasant looking, if you didn't know what was going on story-wise, domestic spaces with the wife tenderly caressing her husband there. She still loves him, and maybe she does not know about the seductress, the woman he's going out with. I would find that hard to believe, probably, but it is possible to think about the movie that way, that she doesn't know. She just knows he's going out at night, and their marriage is on the rocks or in trouble, but doesn't know about the seductress. Well, look how slow this is. She moves around that space, dominating the focal point of the middle of the screen while he's at the bottom, being tenderly cared for by her, versus he was the one who wants to drown her and place her at the bottom of the screen and kill her off. She's tenderly helping him in his weak moment of sleep where he is vulnerable. There's a shot of his interior state with the bulrushes coming up suddenly into our view, exciting and intensely bringing that to the fore of his mind as he wakes up. This is not the idyllic pastoral of the oxen plowing the field with the mother playing with the baby we saw earlier. This is a man with a stark background and shadows and this horrible choice he's got to make internally. And then the exterior mirrors that, obviously. And there he sees his wife in a constricted space, the doorway, vulnerable, trapped. She doesn't know it, but in his view, she's vulnerable and trapped because he can do the action to her. He's the aggressor, the active one. She is the passive one in this relationship at this point. I love this shot because it's the spirit of the woman, the vision of the woman projected by his psyche, something like that. There's probably 15 ways to look at this. And he's trying to reject it and get rid of this spirit. It goes away, but then it comes back and it dominates the whole frame, the way he is hounded by his thoughts of this woman from the city. And it is a spirit, a la the spirits of the age or the spirit of the woman. I don't mean literally in an exorcist kind of way, inhabiting him. I mean the aura, the frame, the temptation around him and within him. And there she is constricted again, the wife. Once again, he is the one who can constrict her literally by drowning her, noting that he again is the aggressor and she is the passive receptor of things. This movie, I should say this as we go here, there's so much to comment on. I meant to say this earlier. I think this movie has a two-part structure, two halves to it. Okay, this is not a typical three-act script, which comes about later and is developed later in Hollywood, and most of the movies you've seen are the three-act script, which you can go look up and see what that is, but a two-act script. The first half is one thing, the second half is another. They have and they have intersection points. A student recently even suggested this movie is a chiasm, which I don't know if that's true, but it could be seen that way if you want to kind of place that structure on it, where the beginning and the end are the same, and the second thing that happens and the next to last thing that happens are the same, and there's a middle point in the movie that is distinct and interesting. The structure then being, and here's a repeat of the shot of him hypothetically envisioning the drowning, which is juxtaposing his internal problems with the external domestic sphere that's blissful and wonderful, and she thinks she's going to go on a hot date to the city and get rid of the kid for a day. Always the mother's dream, to have a break from the children. The structure then being The first half to me is a tragedy that breaks into a comedy. Okay, spoiler alert. The tragedy being he's going to go kill her off, and then we're going to have a death, the death of a person, the death of a family, the death of a mother to this child, and so on and so forth. The country being forsaken, the farm being sold, all these kinds of tragic elements here. The big negative changes that will happen. But, as we know, spoiler alert, the man chooses not to kill the wife. Breaks into comedy. In the midpoint of this movie, they renew their vows and renew their marriage, and the man repents, and there's love in the air once again, almost like the pastoral ideal we saw earlier. So tragedy that breaks into comedy in the midpoint of the movie. So what's the second half of the movie? It's the inverse. It's a comedy that breaks into tragedy. Or almost tragedy, spoiler, then there's an ending that inverts the tragedy. Now, when I use these terms, tragedy and comedy, I really mean the happy ending versus sad ending, which is the most reductive way I could say it. But a comedy being not something that makes you laugh, but it ends well, ends pleasantly. The chaos has been turned into order. The chaos here of him thinking about killing her off, which would cause chaos, and this horrible downfall of everything is going to be inverted, and all ends well with them being, renewed their vows and being married once again. The ending then is comedy, fun things happen, freedom in the city, open-endedness, delight, playing around. There's all that kind of stuff that happens in a sort of Midsummer Night's Dream or a Date in the City kind of way in most of the second half of the movie, with some very strange things happening. It always has the students, going, what is going on in this movie in the second half with pigs getting drunk? But that's comedic aspects, both funny and ending well, or things happening that are funny or happy in a chaotic way. But the ending then, she dies, or he thinks she dies, which would be the tragic ending that he wanted and that he wants right here. He wants to kill her off, and he gets what he wants in the end, but unfortunately, because he's repented in the middle of the movie. Now here we have a classic dog problem, which the dog is trying to stop him. Animals can sense his anger and hatred, so he is it was a dog. Is that what's happening here? Maybe, and that's one interpretation of this. And then the dog is protecting the domestic female, as good dogs in movies and TV shows later will do. And it's a sign that this man is lower than the loyal beasts. He is more beastly than the beasts, as it were. He's more animalistic, acting out. And I love this shot right here, the inversion of the boat in the waterway before then the real boat comes in. Again, that mirror aspect, the real thing, and then the illusion, the real thing, and the hypothetical, the real thing, and the shadow, all throughout this first part of the movie. But we got to get rid of the dog. Can't go on the date to the city. There's probably hundreds of things to say here about this dog interaction. I want to talk about the waterway. The waterway, this is a key idea in movies. I think so many movies use this. Water as a various symbol for the characters and their moral choices and spiritual journeys and all that. Here in this movie, it's very obvious what the geography of the scene is. The city is across the waterway, because we just saw the vacationers coming from there. Here, the country is on this side of the waterway. And then go from one place to the other, you cross the waterway. Is it a lake? I'll probably, for the rest of this video, just call it a lake. But it could be a sea or, I don't know, a large pond. Probably not, but something like that. Water then becomes a place of uncertainty and imbalance, instability. Land is a sure-footed thing in this movie. You're in the country, you're in the country, it's certain what the type of place you're in at, but when you're on the water, you're between these two places. And so this uncertainty, imbalance thing, I'm not in the country, I'm not in the city. Somebody, a scholar might call this a liminal space. I'm not in love with that term here, but a place of, in some movies this would be a freedom. Or in stories like Huck Finn, for example, to be on the Mississippi River, a place of freedom away from the land that is too static for the characters who want to move and grow and change. Here, I think it's a little bit different from that, at least at this point in the movie, where the waterway is as I said, uncertainty, devastation even. Obviously, it's a place where you could possibly die and be submerged, which the man is clearly thinking about. So in some cases, in some movies, I think in the movie City of Mint, City of Men. Oh gosh. Children of Men is the one I want, from 2007. Wonderful movie where the juxtaposition of land and sea is probably the opposite of this. Sea is open freedom. Sea is newness of life, shifting identities, change of mood to a happier openness. Here here the woman's looking around at the natural world going, what? I'm not a bird. I can't fly away. I'm trapped. And these shots are actually indicating she's trapped. Where the man is more a monster-like. Maybe Nosferatu is being faintly quoted here by Murnau himself, quoting himself. But I think monster movies in general, from the 1920s, maybe Phantom of the Opera, a bunch of movies like that, which had monstrous type figures. We said he's lower than animals, and he's a monster too, as his look. And he's the dark one. Clearly, again, a binary. She's the lighter one, not just her skin tone, but the way the light hits her and her hair and her clothes. He's the dark one. And she is feeling that she's trapped, and he has a terrible, wild, psychotic thought. Now, you see the water in the background. We've already seen it on top of him. So now it's the dream, the illusion has come true. And he's come to this moment where there's the monstrous figure rising up, Frankenstein-like, and walking very slowly, like a moving painting, but a haunting one. And look at that imbalance of the boat. That's what I was talking about, with the uncertainty, and she's trapped there. Oh, high-angle shot. She's almost getting drowning herself. Then she turns to religion. The folding of hands, imitating prayer. That will be a key idea in this movie, because country people are supposedly more religious here, I think. And there's the moral choice. From her point of view, looking up at him, he changes his mind. That is the key moment in the movie, maybe the key moment, certainly one of them, 1/3 of the way through the movie, where arguably the tragedy has been upended. Although for her, it's not. For the next 15 minutes, she's going to be like, what the heck? Why am I with this guy? He's going to kill me. You can't recover instantly from something like this. And she still has these horrible feelings about him. But anyway, he's going towards the city now. And I think the Moses thing is here. I've not thought of that until talking about it in this video. I feel like, the threat of killing an innocent with the bulrushes, that's her. She's not faintly a Moses type, not really at all, but, he's the Pharaoh figure. And yet it doesn't happen because religion. And because of her. She's the classic domestic Victorian housewife. The idealized type. I hate to say it, she's blonde and the woman of the city is dark-haired. That is a typical stereotype. For good and not so good. Here they're running through the. You got to get through the woods and the natural environment to get to the city. It's off to the left. If I know this movie correctly, I think it's right. The city, generally speaking, is going to the left. It's not always true, but the country is going to the right. Well, let's see if that holds true for a while here. I know that the train at the beginning of the movie in the first shot was going to the left, so when it was going out to the country, but I think in general that's true. Anyway, they get on this modern piece of transportation. They literally go from animals, oxen, walking and then rowing the boat to then mechanized transportation. A sign that they're in an urban environment. And of course, this is a moment where we're going from, and Buster Keaton's joking about it in his other movies, from horses and horse-drawn carts and plows with animals to mechanization, cars. Obviously, trains have been around for a long time, but in urban spaces. And then we'll get to rural spaces eventually with tractors and whatnot. Wonderful shots here of the man looking sullen, dark. Now he's with mirrors and windows, and you'll see that a little bit more. The windowiness and glass-like appearance of the city, which allows people to see through and into and be reflected. and that will continue to happen here. Practically speaking, glass is more expensive, and the country people aren't going to have it as much probably, but the city is full of glass and in all kinds of ways. So now we're on the train. Before, we were seeing the train from a third-person point of view, and it was crazy and chaotic in those opening shots with multiple trains layered over each other, and perhaps a view of a country person never using a train or rarely using one. What would it be like to be a country person, small town person, coming to a big city, a metropolis, let's say? And the movie does, I think in general, take the point of view, because we have a man and a wife here, main characters, of that kind of person who rarely, if ever, goes to the big city. And then you get this sort of hyper reality of the city there. Bustle, traffic, chaos, seeming chaos at least, but if you were in the city it would be organized. But the way that it's perceived by a countrified person, I think is shown in a number of these special effect shots that we're going to see in a little bit. And so we saw the way that the train came to the country. Now we're seeing the opposite. And thus the structure of the movie, not just as two halves with the tragedy to comedy, it's an out and back story. They go from the country, waterway, city, and then the waterway and the country, and they go back. Oh, she about got hit by a car there. Not good. That's, again, how do country people deal with city? But of course she's emotionally devastated by the marriage. The camera is moving here with them. And we are the third person looking at them from multiple perspectives and seeing, and this kind of shot is great. They're still, like the still lives of their domestic space, with the chaotic, comedic, crazy, disorganized to them things happening around them. And then they come into this restaurant. This is one of my favorites too. There's the glassness of the city, the transparentness of the city. You can see into things. You can see where things are at on the inside. Which, within the country space with that man, psychologically, only the viewer could see inside him, and the wife could sense it. But things can't be seen into in the country. There's secrets out there. And one of the secrets, obviously, the man has a mistress. This shot, I love it. They're still at the bottom on the right, as they're emotionally distraught, while the restaurant goes about its business. And then the city on the left and then the back is bustling. Love this layered shot. Why don't more video makers and movie makers do a layered shot like this? I think there's a lot of potential here. Although there are some that do it, but for the emotional, psychological, spiritual point of view of the characters in a moment, this is a fantastic shot. And who hasn't been on a date? Well, not a date like this where you've nearly been killed by your lover. It's very extreme, but a date that's gone wrong. Married couples, when they go out on dates, on the rare occasions they do, tend to have things come up and have problems on dates, as far as I understand the norm. Sometimes it comes up where you have an argument you didn't mean to, but you have problems. So this is the extreme version of that. Once again, this is like the opening in the house. He's on the left, she's on the right, but now she's turning away and refusing the food and scared of him, versus she being trying to help him out, being tender towards him, and he's turning away, and he's going to turn to the left and go outside and follow the siren song of the seductress. It's you're going to get a lot of repetitions like this in this movie. I'll try to find as many as I possibly can. Very slow movements in this movie. Again, that's why I called it moving paintings earlier, because so you can see the slow development of these paintings as they go and feel obviously the emotion of the characters. And there's a nice juxtaposition. The woman at the table, the man off the table, with a stark background and moving away from him. Moving away from her. It's flat with her, but slanted with him. He's the aggressor. He's the mortal psycho. Not really. Oh, maybe. But that's his state of mind. That's his behavior. That slant there. I love that. And then it's flat for her, which is more normal and orderly. Now she's getting up out of the frame and then into this shot we just saw. It's just wonderful. And they're going to go out into the city she can't take being in this place of commerce and business and shared communion, an eating space. She can't share that space with this madman. We're getting to the halfway point of the movie now. So she's going to go stumble upon and find the right place to be. Before that, it's commerce. And that's not going to solve their problems. The restaurant is not going to solve it. The flowers here are not. And this is plucked nature. So it's nature turned into the artificial, the commercial product. Nothing wrong with that to me, but the flowers becoming a sign and symbol of love. That is not good enough. He's paying for it right there. That's what I mean. He's trying to make an economic exchange. This is not going to overturn this hideous thing that he just tried to do. So the city affords these sort of commercial experiences, which the country does not have. And that may be why the farmers want to sell out and go to the city for jobs, for accessories, for extravagant opportunities. But in the end, what is this movie telling you? It tells us it doesn't rectify these moral and spiritual and marital and social problems that these characters have. Look at that, the juxtaposition of that busy city and then the couple in their own little world in this shot right here. That'll happen for a while in this movie. They're off in their little emotional world. And how many people in big cities have their little worlds individually or with a partner or another or a friend, something like that, versus the bustle of the city. This is an alien environment for them. They're not used to this. And how do they reconcile in this bustling, busy, anonymous environment? They were just in the dark. And then they come into the light. Dark versus light. Binary throughout this movie. And what shows them? What do they see in the light? They see the church. And they see a couple getting married. And once again, we turn to that shot right there. And that was as we saw, the midway point between the dark cornered space they were in with the flowers and then the church. They go to the church. Thankfully, there's a place of worship. A sacred space for them, as it were. They come in, slant of light to the left, on the couple and the preacher, and this is the focal point, as we observe. They come into the light there. But the light throughout this movie, the sun, what is it? A sunrise. The movie's title is A Sunrise. That's the end shot of the movie. The moonlight is not quite right. It's the sunlight that's right. And the moon is a reflection, like a shadow. Is a false image or a dark image of a person. The moonlight where the man was with the seductress wasn't right. It's the sunlight and the literal light of the sun. So it's on this preacher who's giving a sermon or a marital whatever. Here and there's the intertitle. It's so important. This movie rarely has intertitles. Murnau was trying to get rid of them as much as possible and tell a story visually and sonically with the music. But that, keep and protect her from all harm, is the opposite of could she get drowned? And then we close shot of the man crying. I love the slant there. You're going to have to keep noticing that slant in the background. And his world is still warped as he's converting or confessing or even just feeling what's right. Wilt thou love her? Now, actually that brings a point up, which is that the city it's not a strict binary. The city isn't just a place of perversion and awful hustle bustle, corrupt morals like the woman of the city. To me, it's more an ambivalent space. And they're getting the renewal of their vows and the reversal of what the woman of the city said to him here in the city, in the church. The church is located in the city. So you can have restoration and renewal in the city as well as perversion. It's like a total combo of human experience. The bringing together a melting pot of human experience. Hideous and sacred all at once. Monstrous and religious. Monstrous and godly, as it were. If you look at the marker here, forgive me, there. And if you look at the timeline, we're at the 44-minute mark. Almost the halfway point, literally, in this movie, with the wedding bells. So that's the comedic reversal. tragedy, tragedy, and then boom, he repents. And in a typical movie, you know, maybe if this were in the 30s, let's go later, the 50s, this would be the whole movie. You could create a 3-act script out of this first half of the movie. Happy husband becomes perverted, thinks about killing his wife, and boom, is restored at the end. Their marriage is renewed. And then they walk out of the church as if they are married, newlyweds, with the horses there, mirroring the oxen in that pastoral ideal shot we saw. Happy, flowers, in a public space though. Of course, they're witnesses. But I would call this somewhat similar to that pastoral shot. This is the shot you should pay attention to. This is fantastic. It's not just back projection, it's forward projection with the cars going in front of them. But this is not just reality for them as they walk through this bustling city in their own little world, nearly getting killed by cars and traffic. You know, the economic commerce-like thing going around them, but it dissolves or transitions into here the natural setting. That's what they want. That's their world. It's not real. I love how this movie plays with the dreams and shared dreams, not just individual dreams. It's the couples combined. That's my interpretation of their world right now. And the country is a better place for them. And that's the ideal still here, because the city has this problem. Hustle, bustle, fast change. They would prefer to be static for a while in their love. But here, the bustle and the horns and the angry cab drivers, whatever, are making them change. And change too quickly for what they want. Oops. And they wake up to reality. Once again, the dreamscape versus reality it's set before us. The man had it earlier, of course, with his temptations. He was tempted. His dreams were there, perverting him, but then he chose not to enact them, even though he was in the reality where he could. Now they're in the reality of the city that's pushing them out of their marital bliss, although they're still looking pretty happy right now. They just got out of that visionary wonder that they were in. And the man and the wife, what's this movie about? It's about two lovers, but not young ones. They have a child. Life is not that easy anymore. It's different for a married couple, but they are renewed, restored. And what does a couple do when they're restored? Well, now we're going to get in the commercial aspect of this movie. I love that. The dissolve on, the glass, again, transparent. They see themselves in the pictures. And they're delighted to go, photography. She can go get their photograph taken, and he's pretty happy to do it too. Some men aren't. I don't like my picture taken that much. Sorry, my dear wife, to my wife's chagrin. And she's looking at that baby. Yeah, so now we're going to get the comedic part, the comedic second half of this, where they do a bunch of different fun things. It's chaotic, it's blissful, it's happy, and restorative. Two shot there, which we'll get many, many two shots of them. To call this part a comedy is the best way for me to probably help people who don't. They're used to the 3-act script and the build of tensions and problems and obstacles and new reveals and twists in the second act of the movie, which should be happening right now. I think this part seems more open and free, and anything could happen. And what's the plot problem at this point? Would be an unconscious reaction to this movie from a 21st century viewer's point of view. To me, then it is that comedic second half where different kinds of fun can be had, and even in the tense moments where the man is going to attack this other guy for flirting with his wife, it ends up being funny, fun, and happy. So the city, again, is an ambivalent space to me. I don't see it as... It can pervert, it can corrupt. It has generated this woman of the city who's come out to the country and nearly wrecked this relationship and killed this woman off. But it also provides these wondrous opportunities. And that is the ambivalence to me. It has all of the above, whatever you please, in it, including a good barber. And so, but what's happening here symbolically is the man is getting cleaned up. What just happened is, the marriage, renewal of the vows, and now he needs to be cleaned. Not a baptism, but okay, a little bit of hints of that. He's going to be shaved. He's not going to have that monstrous, 5 o'clock shadow on his face anymore. He's going to be cured. I think the manicure is a joke. And what, do men have manicures? Yes, some do. If they're in the city and they're professionals, yes. But not a country guy coming to the city. Okay, that's funny. But to be cleaned up, to be clean shaven, he's no longer looking monstrous with that 5 o'clock shadow. And he is going to be renewed and restored. Although here's the hint of a woman of the city. This is a tease, by the way, for the movie and the man having to deal with a cute woman while his wife looks on. And she's clearly wealthier looking, maybe a pearl necklace. Who knows what those really are, but he's refusing the manicure. And that's the funny part of the movie, the comedic aspect. But to be cleaned is the thing he needed after he nearly tried to kill his wife. Now here's another adultery threat. She does, as far as I know, the wife still does not know that the man hooked up with the woman of the city. And probably did it more than once, many, many times, who knows. The inversion happens here. Maybe she will be perverted by the city. Maybe she will enter into adultery within the city as this man ridiculously snuggles up to her. The classic movie threat of the barber cutting the guy's neck. And the man gets to look at the inversion of what he was trying to do at the beginning. But she is too saintly, too Mary-like, too Dutch domestic, 17th century painting-like, and so she will refuse. As the godly woman, I might as well keep calling her the Proverbs 31 woman. This is cross-cutting, again. I mean, it's like the beginning of the movie where you had the seductress, the woman of the city, and the man. Cut to woman and the child in the house. And then you have these two cut to the man in the chair. But now he's intervening, and his power is showing in where he's at in the frame. Taller, cleaner, lighter, and coming in, at the top and the centers of the frame, where he's more dominant. In the first half of the movie, we saw him a little bit more in the bottom corners of the frame, symbolizing his internal state and his moral choices and all that. Well, again, the threat of anger and violence here. This guy hasn't changed actually that much. And it's country versus city. Once again, a binary here. The countryman upset at the morals of the city life, and the fancy city guy here. You can see him in the shadow. The shadow is being projected once again. The angry second doppelganger, like shadowy, seductive self onto that man right there, who doesn't get killed but feels like he might have. There she sees herself in mirrored selves all over the place. Is that different from shadows or similar? Good question. I'll let you play around with that one. I love the look of the man now. He's become a more of a gentlemanly like look as a clean-shaven man. And he is better, more picturesque, photographic for his wife, who always looks put together, clean, and jovial or joyful. Fade to black. Now they're going to the photographer, who is like the movie camera. The movie is the movie camera itself. These people are going to have their pictures taken, immortalized in a photograph, but they're already having that done in the movie, by the movie itself. I love the suggestion of playfulness here with the guitar and the instruments there. We will see them later on dance, with music being a key part of this whole comedic aspect of the second half of the movie. As it was in the first half with the seduction scene with the tubas and all that jazz band we saw. But that was a different sort of look. There we have a static guitar, was that the saxophone? Here this is interesting. The picture is being taken in a natural environment, but it's an artificial natural environment with the fake tree painting thing in the background. I think that might be the first time we see this man smile. But, it's just like with this movie, they're not really in a natural environment. It's a set or an artificial one, but it is the natural environment when they're in the country. So there are pictures being taken as if they're in that place. There, I love that inversion of them. Upside down world. They're in a kind of wonderland. She even has a faint resemblance, obviously she's much, much older, to Alice. They've fallen down into Wonderland, and then they're big, and then they're small, and then weird things happen to them in the city, which is that Wonderland, illogical, irrational place where magical things can happen. Like this guy taking their picture. Oh yeah, it's a saxophone. Yeah, but static. That's my point. It's not like those crazy wild tubas in that interposed shot of all the jazz band stuff going on earlier, which was crazy, aligned with the woman of the city's vision of the city. No, this is more static, and maybe more in line with her vision of what she likes. And there they enter into another kind of painting, in my view. More like a romantic or Victorian era painting, I think. Maybe. Although it has a lamp in it. You'll notice, again, he's in the center tops of the frame. More active, less passive than he was in the first half of the movie. As a man, that is, again, it's a stereotype. You do not need to agree with it. I'm just describing it. But it's more manly to be that. Another classic movie gag, they knock the head off a statue. How many movies does this happen in? They're in trouble. Oops. Comedic. They're causing chaos in this place. Just as the city is causing chaos for them. But, again, a good kind of chaos. And it's typical, like, country people are goofy and they don't get classical culture with the statue. And so then they mess it up because they don't, the movie's stereotyping that way too. The country people come to the city, they're bumpkinish. Which again, to remind you, as the opening of the movie said, this is a universal movie. It's talking about everything all at once. Yeah, the tone is so different from the first half of the movie at this point. Put a fake, goofy head on the statue. Versus thinking about killing your wife. He sees it, and doop. This is a testament to Murnau's skill. You should watch Nosferatu and his other movies, and then he comes to this and makes this movie, which has some silent comedic aspects to it. It's not a Chaplin, it's not a Harold Lloyd, but it has a few elements of that, doesn't it? There they see themselves doubled. This is the right kind of doubling in a romantic image versus the shadowy self, which we've seen so many times in the first parts of the movie. And to be iconographed, to be made into an icon in a moment, in the photograph. Now, again, you should watch this movie as a series of moving photographs, moving paintings. Oh, good. So now, finally, this takes a long, long time to do. We're reminded that the woman of the city is still active. She's still there in the country smoking. She's an agent there of chaos. And not only that, she's thinking about selling the farm. Again, real world urbanization happening in real life, mirrored in this movie. Maybe for Europe, but certainly for America. I'm not as familiar with Europe and what was probably happening there too. We get a close shot of her smoking, fade out to black. And again, reminded this, the evil is still present somehow, whatever she represents. Great establishment shot here. The chaotic whirl of the hyper-reality of the city. I'm using hyper-reality. Of course, that's a postmodern term for the 70s and 80s, but whatever. I'm projecting onto the past here. To a country person, the chaos of the city looks like this, and hyper-real is exactly right, because it's an artificial environment for them. This is the carnival, World's Fair-like place they're going to go into, and we ourselves, as the camera, kind of go over and into it, and we get to skip the line. Who wouldn't want to do this? The movies get to simulate our dreams. We don't have to wait in those lines or be in the masses of people. We get to go down the center, as if the couple gets to do this. And this is like the proto Mall of America. Roller coasters indoors. And elephants parading around. And clowns and whatever else is in here. The commercial delights of big city life. Which is not scary. It is providing the romantic restoration needed for this marriage. If you take a still of this, it's a busy image, and then distort it somewhat, we're gonna get any of those early 20th century painters, and that right there, like that shot right there, of their visions of city life, and that obviously is the contrasting the binary contrast with the countryside and its more static, homely, naturalistic kinds of shots. Here's our first shot of the pig. Okay, so the pig is a classic country kind of animal. You raise pigs, but now you put them in the city and they're gimmicky, goofy fun in this hyper-real world, which involves the guy throwing balls at targets and winning prizes. And the pig, like the couple, is going to escape into a wild wonderland of intoxicating delights. Like the country has come to the city and can experience temporarily that sort of delightful phenomenon. It's almost a tourist advertisement for a lot of cities. Just as the tourists went to the countryside from the city in the beginning of the movie, so too country folk come to the city and experience the wonder world delights. The city might take your money here, but also, especially if they want to live it up, But the pig, when it goes loose and goes crazy, that's essentially what they are doing. And so the country going into the city, that sort of thing is the idea. The movie contains, think about it, the movie contains the seeds for all kinds of animal movies. I must mention one of my favorites is Babe, Pig in the City, which exactly does this in its own weird ways. You should watch George Miller's Babe in the Pig in the City. I have not thought about that movie in relationship to Sunrise, but it is possible that, certain it's an indirect quotation, but it could be possible there are direct quotations here. Babe, Pig in the City. The city folk go to the country folk go to the city. And the chaos ensues thanks to that. This movie has a million influences, and there's no end to them. One of them I should mention is Song to Song by Terrence Malick. One of my favorite Malick movies. Most people don't like it. Go look at the ratings to it. But that movie is supposed to be watched as a song, and as a song of songs from the Bible, as it were. So this movie, being a song, is to be seen as a fun song. I think we're in some kind of limerick at this point. Earlier it was a ballad, a tragic ballad of how a man might kill his wife. Here we're in some kind of goofy comic song now, obviously. So an hour in, how do you watch this as a song? Well, a song of the drunken pig. the pig gotten loose. And of course, in these movies from the 1920s, temperance, prohibition, anti-alcohol, alcohol bans in the United States, alcohol being illegal. Every time you see alcohol in the movie, there are comments galore on this. Now, are they in an American city and able to drink like this? Or is this like cooking wine and the guy is sipping on cooking wine as he shouldn't be? I think that's what it is. If this is a song of everywhere, though, it's not illegal everywhere, just in America. But to joke about drunkenness is a way of kind of getting a dig at, the 18th Amendment, which outlawed alcohol sales in the United States. Maybe all alcohol. I don't... Something like that. But the pig getting drunk, it's not a human getting drunk, so you can get away with it more easily. It's an animal getting drunk. But the joke is on prohibition. In some way, shape, or form. However you want to take it. Even the floor has this black-white binary on it. I gotta bitch in that, the dark light scheme in this movie, as we've seen so many times. Even that floor has it. Which, to get drunk in this case, okay, there's a darkness to it because it's illegal, but there's a fun aspect to it because it's funny in a movie, and funny for an animal to get drunk for 1920s viewers. Maybe not for you, but 20s viewers. The man rescues the pig, and he probably knows pigs better than these other people in some way, shape, or form. I don't know that he has direct knowledge of pigs, but he has farm animals, or he's worked with them, as we've seen. This is great. He's rescued it. They congratulate him. There in the background is our band. That might even be the same band, for all I know. It was in the earlier shots of the seduction scene where the woman says, "Hey, come to the city with me." Now we're going to get the instruments playing, but this is a different kind. So once again, it's not that jazz craziness in cities is wrong. That was the woman of the city's vision, come away with me vision. Here, with the renewed marriage, this is a restorative kind of band opportunity. Of course, they're going to play a peasant song, subtly condescending or mocking these people, I don't know, but these people are able to dance to the peasant music. And of course, as you know, the peasant music, folk tale stuff is integrated into big city art. Symphonies, major novels, poetry, and so on. So the integration of these two halves is here in this comedic aspect throughout, whereas it's more of a stark separation, maybe arguably in the first half. Gags and jokes about women's indecency here as well. That reminds me to say the Hays Code of 1930, coming out 2 or 3 years after this movie, will not allow indecency for females. I mean, for males, whatever, but for females. And that's the joke here, is that some movies, some of the time, do have indecent women, including the beginning of this movie with the woman of the city in her undergarments. But these people are not, like the Hays Code will argue, being perverted by the city at all. I think that's an important thing to know, that this movie is already complexifying that and one-upping the Hays Code, which is going to be a stark binary. This kind of stuff is bad for movies, never show it. This kind of stuff is bad, you must show it in a certain context. Here we have these people going to the city and having a delightful time at the moment, even though the threats of indecency are here, but they're kind of goofy, gimmicky fun. And now the happy couple, kind of newlyweds, but not really, are the center of attention. And for the man, again, ironic and versatile, his temptation was to go away to the city earlier in the movie. Well, he did. He ended up doing that with a woman. But it wasn't the woman of the city, it was his wife. So the come away to the city call is not wrong. It's just wrong in that context with her. You got the wrong woman. It's the right... So the movie is offering not a pietistic way of seeing the world. Like, avoid this kind of stuff. Avoid women avoid women. Avoid cities. Avoid drunkenness. Avoid alcohol, let's say. You shouldn't go off morally with the wrong woman. You shouldn't you know, go into the shadows and think murderous thoughts, but you can have these experiences in the right context, in the right way. So pietism would ban dancing, for example. Pietism bans it, you know, but maybe not for couples, but dancing no good. Yeah, at this time, a lot of puritanical sort of people, excuse me, Puritans, just using that word to denote fundamentalist, pietist kind of stuff that bans certain things. Here are they drinking alcohol? I have no idea. You know, that's where I'm confused in this movie. I'm not entirely clear on the rules of alcohol for this movie, given that it's in no place in every place. Now here's another shared vision. You know, before the temptation scenes with the man and the woman in the city, and now these, you know, to us probably these look like creepy alien angels. But the shared vision of love, and this is the ultimate love. They're at the bottom of the screen in a restaurant, but not like that restaurant of earlier where they were static and at the bottom right-hand corner. They're here in the bottom, sharing a moment with commerce, food, shared, you know, communion, as it were, with the crazy glass stuff in the background transparent to the wider chaos of the city. And this is glorious. So you are supposed to compare these shots across the movie. And remember 40 minutes ago what you saw to see these other shots that are saying the same thing, but the couple is in a different context, in a different state of mind. I think they're a little tipsy, you know. So maybe they're not in the United States, as it turns out, right? Or they're in a non-prohibition United States, some kind of dream world. Because the movie allegorizes, could be an allegory, more of a fable, I would argue. And the fable pulls it away from a particular historical context, which would be 1927 America, where they couldn't go get plastered, they couldn't go get tipsy. Unless they were in a speakeasy, which would be illegal. You know, you couldn't do it publicly. Great shots here of the whole area as they move from inside to outside across that fountain. And through this crowd with the fireworks in the background. Again, light on dark there. Lighting up of things with the artificial, which can be good, but the sun is the best. But light on darkness. So now we've had a delightful date night. And you know, this is a subject of many romantic comedies. Night Out in the City, Woody Allen in Purple Rose of Cairo. Go watch that movie. It's fantastic. You know, I'm not necessarily quoting this, but kind of. The delight of the city, the cityscape for a country kind of person, for a poor person. And now they're ready to go back home on this in this transitional place, the mechanized transportation, and now back, there we go, on the waterway. We know where they're going. We understand the geography of the movie perfectly with that aligned moonlight down to the reflection on the water. Everything is in order and aligned light-wise for them in the calm. And what are they doing? They're not using labor. They're using, this is a wonderful shot, they're using the wind, sailing. Because it's easy to go back home. Hard to get to the city, easy to go back home. And that kind of shot, that's a painterly kind of image. I feel like this here now is they're in the proper sphere, the proper place. Again, you can disagree. The man up at the top above, she at the bottom, the more passive figure. And now they're looking at the light. Other people on boats versus those birds. I don't know why those birds are there flying away earlier when the man was thinking about killing the woman. Here they're seeing other people delighting, playing around, dancing, playing music. She's jamming with it. You know, where we've gone from at the beginning of this movie where he was sleeping around and her, killing her, to perfect night is a fantasy. Who is going to survive a date night where they nearly get killed by their lover at the beginning, and at the end they love each other more than ever? Right? So we're in a fable of fantasy. A moral one I keep arguing. And all is well. That's the comedy. All has turned out to well, and they just go home and be the perfect happy couple. Better, probably, than the idyllic world we saw in that vision of them with the oxen and the baby in the springtime setting. She is not by herself in these shots, cornered in the boat. That's what we saw earlier. Him versus her, cutting back and forth. They're together. But, okay, classic high school, literature problem, man versus nature, humans versus nature, I should say. And now you can beat the woman of the city and her temptation and her wiles, but you can't beat the natural world. Common idea, in stories of this time, I think of, their eyes were watching God, Jack London dealing with Alaska. The weather is going to cause, if everyone conquers their problems with other people or economic forces, you can't conquer the natural environment. The Old Man and the Sea, Hemingway comes 20 years after this. I can probably come up with 50 examples where the storm is the thing at the end, or a disaster, natural disaster, which shuts down the delight of the city. It's happening there, and it's going to move towards them on the waterway, maybe come into the country too. The thing that unifies everything is this disaster, which can hit everybody. And this is the true chaos. Earlier it was the man-made, human-made chaos. Now it's the natural environment causing it. She remains asleep. I don't love this, but the Mary, Joseph, Jesus thing I mentioned earlier, now she's like Jesus in the storm, not able to wake up. I won't say she's able to calm the storm, but the story of Jesus being asleep in the storm while the disciples frantically try to awaken him to stop the storm. You see that light in the background is shifting, and now we have the imbalance and the vulnerability and the uncertainty of the waterway, by an order of magnitude or more. And all of that means that their lives could be upended. Now, not by the choice of a human person, but by the choice of the universe. This is perhaps could be read cosmically, as much as just like nature on Earth. It's cosmic forces now attacking the man and the woman who were, by their own choices, able to renew themselves, but they can't escape from the wider cosmos, causing them grief and destruction. That's the other tragic element. The moral choice of humans at the beginning, with the man maybe killing his wife, drowning her. Well, now we get the natural world doing that, threatening to drown them. And this is not a moral problem. This is a natural problem. And arguably, if you want to think of this movie in terms of order, the moral problem is not as bad, because we can overcome it, as the natural problem, which is hard, maybe impossible to overcome. Now, ironically, he's got the bulrushes, which were haunting him when he woke up this morning. It's the first thing on his mind. And he did it because he was going to kill her and save himself. Now, of course, the thing that was used for evil becomes used for good. Now, I keep quoting the Bible. Once again, the Joseph story comes up. And 1920s people, some of them, maybe most of them, are going to know these Bible stories. And they'll be echoed in their minds. I don't know if Murnau is a Christian. It doesn't matter. Because at this point in time, when your audience is majority Christian, nominally or seriously, they're going to know the stories. And so that's why I bring up these sort of seed-bearing stories. This is maybe a Jonah story, too, in its own weird way, because the man has early in the movie a violation. And he deserves to have something come wreck him and knock him out of the ship. But the Joseph story being, evil is now used for good. Evil, the bulrushes you try to use to save the man, is used for good for the woman to save her. Although he's not going to know it for a while. And he's going to feel like he's in a tragedy. after the second half's comedy. Fade to black there. So all dark, all dark. So dark again. Right? Then the light comes out. And maybe there's hints and hopes of light. Again, this is like right down that right center where they were sailing. And that shot of this countryscape. And the fog, there's the hint of the fog, the cloud sort of thing we saw with him walking earlier to the seductress. Here it's over the moon, so there's a battle here between murkiness and certainty, devastation and loss, and truth and love. There he is saved. Now there is a bottom in the left corner of the frame. Now he's way, way, way down there. Earlier, his own moral self, his choices, he had put himself basically there. Now, nature has thrust him even farther down on the left where he is on those rocks. Now he's moved over to the right side of the frame, but placed all the way at the bottom, humbled, humiliated, made as low as he could possibly go, literally within the frame. And here he is struggling at the low point of the frame to climb the rocks. So the movie, in a way, is, if you want to, I think of it as a man's story. I mean, it's their story, but it's a man because he made the moral choice, and now he's being thrust low and humiliated. And calling out desperately with that dissolve. He's taking some time to call out desperately, as that dissolve says. And the bleak light on him is just barely lit up. Second time. And this movie is not going to be like a modern movie. You would see a cross-cut to her several times. But we're being reminded of her existence once again. But, of course, we have to go back here to see that people are rushing to go and help the wife. It's emergency. Notice how barely dressed she is once again. I have to emphasize that yet again. She's on the window to the left. We've seen that. It's a typical geographical thing. Again, the man was called out to the window on the left in 15 minutes in the movie. Now there she is again. And for her, the woman of the city, she believes that the plan has been enacted. She thinks everything has gone well. For her, from her own work perspective, this is comedic. All has ended well. The plan has gone correctly. From the man's point of view, of course, it's with his renewal, it's tragic. Oh gosh. Once again, stripping off clothes. No one would have a problem with that today. Like, who would care? No one. I mean, very few people. They don't have the power to complain about it. Most people would slough them off. But back in the 1920s, I love that multi-layered shot right there of the foreground, the mid-ground, and the background. As they all go, you can see this full-on search and the rush for it, and then the woman of the city looking on over the top of it. The man is in the center of attention. Another kind of chaos, but unlike the city, with the water in the background instead of the solid, static road, which provides firm footing. Here we have uncertainty once again, with the water being the place where she might be buried. Wonderful shots here. The man searching desperately for the love of his life, and with faint lights. And he goes to the bottom right corner of the frame, desperate. That's the again, the bottom corner of the frame period is used here for desperation, humiliation, and all that. Just as the woman coming this other way from top right to bottom left. And we get this shot so we can see she is possibly fine. Can't tell if she's dead or alive, actually. But she is alive, as you know, spoiler alert. Whereas he went the other way. He went from top left to bottom right. So then there are odds, and he's not finding her. That sort of editing geography is helping us understand that. He's not coming after her. He's going somewhere else. Oh, but we have a threat. The bulrushes are being dumped one by one. She might die. Oh, this is a great shot here. He comes up. into the frame, and the fourth wall break with his wedding ring visible, and this, you just don't see that in this movie. That is an intense shot, because we've seen two shots. We've seen him in the bottom corner of the frame. Now he's almost full on, right, and looking desperately, which then, of course, that's a reaction shot. We should feel that way about the woman or the wife and her situation and the possible tragedy here. I've seen the bulrushes, obviously, in the water. On the soundtrack, you've got this lone, it might be a French horn, imitating his calls to her. That score that accompanies this movie, pre-recorded, does those kinds of things, like the intertitle drowning, melting. So in the score, does some of these instruments echo or even voice the voicings. It's a total novelty for movies to do that, something like that. Look at, how dark this is and how stark these shots are. Contrasts completely with the last, let's say, 40 to 50 minutes of the movie where they're in the city and everything was hustle and bustle and craziness and multiple layers of the frame. And now we have dark, empty spaces, a void even, call it an abyss, which is used in movies still. And think about 2001: A Space Odyssey, the void of space, the blackness of space. There are some stars in that, but to have nothing there and to feel like you're in the void of nothingness, that's his life right now without her. And again, the movie is doing an allegory and a fable of his internal state. Exterior, the exterior, I called it pathetic fallacy earlier. The external mirrors his internal, or his internal state is the exterior, the natural scenes. There he goes to the bottom right again. There he is, slumped over in the corners of the frame. So what kind of song are we in again? Remember, this is a song. And the song has many, many, many parts. First, like I just mentioned 2001. This 2001 is like a 4-part movie. It has literally 4 parts. And you could read it or think about it as a symphony, with a classical symphony, like a Beethoven symphony with 4 parts. Does this movie have 4 parts? I'm not really sure. So that's why I'm asking what kind of song it is. I'm not prepared to say what it is. But it's got this sort of ballad aspect, a tragic moment near the end with, spoiler alert, restoration. The glimpse of hope at the very end. The renewal, the restoration of the woman back to the country. Everybody's well at the end of this movie. But here, it's like, if it ended here, it would be like a tragic ballad. He's back to looking the way he did at the beginning of the movie. But it's a different look now. Before, it was his own desire to annihilate. Now, he has seen, or he feels, annihilation. He didn't do it, though. But he feels what he wanted to do. And that feeling of total loss of another one, I hope none of you ever experience it, or you feel like you lose someone you love somehow. They just disappear, which is here the problem. It's awful. Like, where are they? I have no idea. That feeling is being painted for us in these photographs, which are completely unlike the photograph that they took of themselves, happy, married, in the city, that artificial background. We return to the bedroom, and it's the same setup. Slanted, bars on the bed, light patches, and he's walking somberly and slowly. This is an expressionistic shot, German expressionistic, exaggerated feel of the man's devastated self, feeling the annihilation of his wife, his emptiness, loneliness, and he collapses on her bed, right, where she should be. The opposite happened earlier, where she was on his bed caressing him in the morning. Here's a repeat of the beginning, so we have to remember this. She comes and does her siren song thing at the same place in the same way on the next day. Calls out, and he's right in the right spot now in the frame where she's calling to him, and he's over her mouth. where before he was down in the bottom corner looking to the left, and it was the opposite here. Everything is right in terms of her perspective and the geography of the scene. He is hearing her where her face is in the other shot. And so all is aligned for them. She gets what she wants. The wife drowns. She gets this man to pull him out of the city. I think that's what's being said here. And it's a ironic mocking of this man's desires and choices earlier in the movie. It's wonderful binary cross-cutting here between these two people in different spaces, different dispositions towards life and towards the woman's death. Ooh, and here again, he's going to be aggressive. This man has not solved his anger problems. Although maybe, I don't want to justify him, but more rightly so, because she caused this by seducing him, but he chose. So maybe he should not be chasing after, the threat of another death. Death begets death. Murder begets another murder. The Rene Girard comes up for me here. Like, violence creates more violence. They want to kill someone else. Someone will want to kill him if he kills her here. So this unending bloodshed, which is the initiation of murder of the wife. And now the good in whoever this woman is, innkeeper woman, calls to stop. An intense close shot with the fourth wall break there. So another one, and that's really a call. We might, as the audience, want her to die, thinking that she's kind of caused all this to happen. I blame the man, by the way. It's his fault. But that call to stop the violence comes from a woman, a country woman, and an older one who's wiser, perhaps, and knows their scenario. Stop. Don't do this anymore. Now, of course, is the call. There's the wife, right? And she knew the wife was there. Look at the man humble himself, turned away from us on the bottom right, sort of, with the woman of the wife in focus. And again, she just looks so saintly throughout this. It's almost a Disney princess image. He didn't wake her up. He's not Prince Charming, but the Prince Charming helping the woman back to, out of her sleep or slumber, back to reality. And the happy Disney endings. I mean, think of Snow White in 10 years from this movie. I would like to put Snow White in conversation with this and see how they would talk to each other, because no doubt Disney probably saw this. Now we're seeing how the woman was found. Pulled out of the water, the uncertain place. And I love how that dissolves from telling this, from being, the way the story is being told to now here. And in this love affair, scented love affair with these two old people. Love begets, this is murder begets murder. Violence begets violence. Love begets love. The opposite of Rene Girard. So go read Rene Girard. He will be very helpful in your movie watching experience, even though he's not a movie critic. We're about at the end. The song ends happily. The comedy happens because all has been all will be restored here. All is restored. All is well. And the shots of the sun coming up will tell us that the real true light of day, to illuminate the truth of the countryside, to restore it, to bring new life, regenerate, all those very, very basic symbolic values. And but that country pastoral ideal there, with the woman leaving, horse-drawn cart, she gets that treatment versus the, this country people going to the city, get the train and the cars and all that. Light of day, this is the shot of shots to renew, restore, as the woman leaves and all is well. Back there in the domestic space, the husband, the wife, and the child, and the godly, saintly wife in bed. Hair down, she is her full self and not done up. looking, I suppose, more younger, which is that restoration idea. And the light is all on her. The man coming in and kissing to dissolve to the sun, the kiss, the love, the marriage renewed to the sunrise. Very basic ideas, but that is the movie as a fable, as a song. So what do you think of this video and the commentary in this movie? Do you like it? You don't need to like the movie, but to appreciate it in some basic ways is what the goal of this video was. I really appreciate you watching this, and please subscribe to the channel and comment on it. Thank you very much. See you later.